Uh, Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
What's up, guys? It's the Morning Deuce, Monday, June 27th. The month is almost over. If you don't watch Game of Thrones, you probably should. But if you haven't watched the finale or you don't watch it and you want to at some point, don't listen, because today's episode is all spoilers. Because yesterday was the season finale, and it was straight fire. It was awesome. And so that's all I really want to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about. This season was a little slow at first. It went by super quickly, I feel like, but there were some episodes in the middle of the season you were just waiting for things to build. But just like Thrones always does, the very end of the season is just absolutely unbelievable. And this year was the same, man. The last two episodes were two top fivers to me. I mean, those two are in the top five with like the Battle of Blackwater, the episode where Joffrey gets poisoned, and the Battle of Hardhome where everyone gets raised. The Night King raises all the dead people that just get massacred. Those are like the three best. Those three and the two this season. That's the top five. So to get two top fivers in back to back, that's impressive. To keep bringing the heat. So hats off to the people working on Game of Thrones. What was cool about this season was it felt sort of like some of the main storylines, we knew what was going to happen, but they just did a really good job making it happen. So it was predictable, but still kind of impressive. You know, like a lot of the things felt predictable, but they were still kind of impressive the way that they went about it. Whereas in seasons past, I don't think everything was predictable. Like, you never really knew how the Hound and Arya were going to figure it out. You never really knew that how she was going to get to Bravos, or how the whole, like, situation with Sansa was going to work out. And then she all of a sudden gets to be Ramsay's bride. Like, that whole thing is crazy. This time you sort of knew. Like, you knew that Jon Snow was going to win the Battle of the Bastards. You knew the Knights of the Vale were going to come once Sansa asked for their help. You knew it was going to happen, but it was more about how perfectly they pulled it off. I mean, they executed that incredibly. You knew that Daenerys was going to get a fleet of ships and get control of her dragons and escape her Dothraki horde. You knew it was going to happen. It was all about how they did it. Like, you knew she was going to get lit on fire at some point, but it was still cool how she did it. So that was pretty amazing. Just the way that they were able to it was still awesome the way they pulled off even what you knew what was going to happen. You knew, I guess, if you were paying attention, you kind of knew that Cersei was going to try to blow everything up and kill everyone. You knew that young Ned Stark was rescuing his sister, who was giving birth to Jon Snow, who was not a bastard at all. You kind of knew it. I mean, the internet underground was letting you know the theories have been pouring in for 2 or 3 years. The fact that they kept touching on that. You knew it was going to happen, but they pulled it off really well all the same. But they added just incredible amounts of little spoilers, or like little unpredictable things that really made the season work. I mean, to have Rickon's head just be like sliced off, and then to have whatever her name is, Osha or whatever, who was carrying him around, just get like murdered when you think she's going to seduce Ramsay and like pull a fast one, he just murders her. I mean, that stuff was crazy. The way that they killed Ramsay was nuts. You didn't think it was necessarily going to go down like that. Tommen just jumping out the building. I mean, that was crazy. First, him just being a relentless, just pussy, basically. Sorry, I know that's probably the wrong word to use. It's the only one to describe him. He's just been so soft. He won't stand up for anything at all. And then finally, he literally is like kept in a chamber, and then just for him to just, again, take the soft way out and just kill himself is epic and totally unexpected. The Hodor thing was obviously unbelievable, the way that they pulled that off this season. Very unexpected that his value would be so important. And the way that they showed that Bran can kind of affect the past or the future by going into the past is kind of crazy. And that was just something completely unexpected. So there's a lot of that really cool. They've thrown in enough unexpected things. I mean, you knew Arya was going to make it out alive, but the way that she came back and took out Walter Frey in this episode was amazing. So I think they've done a great balance of predictable with the main storyline that we knew was going to happen, of the whole take over everything, but throwing all these weird nuggets all over the place is crazy. And now it's basically women in power everywhere. I mean, you look at it, Cersei's on the throne, Daenerys is in charge of this fleet and these cities, and then Yara is in charge, like Theon's sister is in charge of the, partnered along with her. You have that woman Paramore who's in charge of Dorne. You have the woman, the grandmother Tyrell, who's in charge of that whole family now. Like, it's basically women everywhere. And even that woman from Bear Island, who's just like the little girl, who's the most amazing character. Everybody loves her. It's been a very intense. Arya taking back her person, finally admitting like she can't run from who she is, and like taking herself back so much after like seasons of the women just being like total placeholders for men. They've finally taken it back. Brienne has done some awesome things in this season, but there's still a couple men turning some tables. I mean, the Jon Snow thing, you thought for a second maybe Sansa would be the one that they're rallying behind, but then Jon Snow sort of becomes that focal leader again. And then the same thing with Peter Baelish, the whole Littlefinger, like he's definitely still pulling tons of cards. So, but that's a huge thing. Like, women have totally taken control, almost completely everywhere. So they're setting up a lot of stuff. One thing that bothers me a little bit, it just makes no sense, is they sort of play with like the space-time continuum of how easy or hard it is to get from one place to another. I mean, it took Arya and the Hound like a full season, it felt like, to get from the Walter Frey massacre to the point where the Hound is left for dead, and then Arya hops on a boat and goes to Braavos. It took them like a whole season. In an episode and a half, basically, Arya gets all the way to Walter Frey's, covers that entire distance again, throws on fake faces, and takes him out. I mean, it makes no sense. It took Varys like 4 episodes to get to Dorne, and then 4 scenes later, he's on the boat with Tyrion and Daenerys. They play with the time continuum thing so much. It just doesn't make sense to me. And the biggest one of all is obviously when Davos and the Onion Knight get all the ships from the bank, and then 2 minutes later, they're all north of the wall, like surrounding Mance Rayder. It doesn't make sense. They totally play with the time, but it's good enough. I mean, it's crazy. I wonder if they're going to go back to having Bran, now that he can kind of see these memories, go back in time and change things. I wonder if they're going to play with that again, because that'd be crazy. Also, this other weird thing that I'm starting to notice is there's kind of like 3 sections of gods. You have the Lord of Light people, like the Red Woman. You got the old gods, which are like the trees that cry and like the children and all that stuff. And then you have the 7, right? Which is clearly, the 7 looks like it's never really done anything. We don't really have any reports of it saving anyone, and people have mostly used it for power. And now it's gone. Cersei literally blew it up, and it never did anything. It was just like a fake use of religion for the purpose of getting power. But the Lord of Light has been pretty effective. There's never been a time, really, the Lord of Light failed except you could argue when Stannis, burned his daughter so that they could try to have something good happen. But even then, everyone was kind of halfway out. With Melisandre running away, even then, it kind of felt like she knew eventually it wasn't going to work. But, I mean, the Lord of Light has brought back a bunch of people and the whole Jon Snow effect and all of that. I mean, that hasn't been wrong. And then we've seen, like, the old gods are clearly powerful. It sort of feels like the Lord of Light is used to tell the future, and it seems to be pretty right to know if people still have relevance in the future. And the old gods is what Bran keeps looking at to tell the past. So, like, we saw a great example of it in the last episode. Bran is using that tree to go back and see young Ned and Jon Snow be born and everything. And then you see Sansa in front of one of those trees talking about how she's been praying, whatever, and she prayed in that tree for everything and it didn't work. She was praying to be somewhere else and blah, blah, blah. And then Littlefinger says to her, like, you can't keep waiting on the past. You have to start thinking about the future and, like, the future of us together. And then she walks away from the tree. And it's sort of a moment to me that those old gods literally do symbolize, like, the things that happened in the past and your connection to them. And the Lord of Light is sort of the things that are going to happen and the future god. But they both seem to be working. Which is very weird. Very strange, but very weird. So now we have this weird thing where I think this whole predictable but how has to continue. There's 2 6-episode seasons left. Well, we kind of know what has to happen. I mean, Cersei has to die. Daenerys is going to take Westeros. Bran is going to somehow tell Jon that he is actually a Stark and a Targaryen. And then he is going to have to be able to communicate that to Daenerys. And then they can beat the army of the undead, which makes sense because she has dragons, so they can light them on fire. And then also, he knows that dragon glass kills them. So you'd figure they have dragons. They can just make lots of dragon glass. So there you go. But how that all takes place is going to be kind of crazy. How they sort of unite the fact that Jon Snow and Daenerys can kind of see eye to eye, because I feel like at first they're not going to, and how they can sort of figure out how to unite everyone. That's going to be really cool. I feel like Theon's going to have to be like the connector between the two of them. That'll probably be his role. But to see how everything moves together in such a short period of time, I'm almost afraid they're going to rush it because they have so many moves to make. But, I mean, in the last 2 episodes alone, we lost Ramsay, we lost, like, crazy amounts of people. One's dead, the High Sparrow's dead, Tommen's dead, Marjorie's dead, Loras Tyrell is dead. There's basically no Baratheons left except for Gendry, who's been rowing a boat for like 7 seasons, who's Robert's bastard son. But there's none left, especially with Tommen being a fake one dying. I mean, I guess the only one left is Cersei, but she's not really one. And then there's basically no male Tyrells left at all, unless they have like cousins and uncles that we don't really know about, just the grandma. There's basically like most of the male Starks are dead, although now we know that Jon is a male Stark, but it's like a lot of the male lines have just been cut out with this whole women taking power thing. It's kind of crazy. But we lost a ton of characters, so they must be able to string something together. I'll be interested to see how they make it work. Because obviously at some point in time, Daenerys and Jon have to kind of unite together to beat the wall has to come down so that the Night King can take all the undead south. And then when that happens, they're going to have enough dragon glass and be united together. So you figure 1 season of them settling the throne and uniting, and then another season of them figuring out how to beat the undead. And there's our 2 6-episode seasons. It's going to be crazy. The show is fire, man. The production is so good. Everything has been unbelievable this season in terms of the writing. I hope it gets completely unpredictable. I hope I'm wrong with all the stuff I just said, but I feel like I can't be. I feel like that's the only logical way to make it end. But I hope that I'm wrong. Like, I honestly am rooting for the White Walkers. I know that's bad. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I just want like the most. What makes Game of Thrones so good is they just kill people at random, and so you never know who to root for. Like, you're all on Robb Stark's team, and then boom, he's dead. Like, you're all on Ned Stark's team, boom, he's dead. You're all on Gendry's team, boom, he's in a rowboat for 6 years. You know, you have no idea what's going on. Even if you're like, oh, Tommen's finally going to get it, and then he just kills himself. Theon's going to get it. Theon's finally going to man up. For like 2.5 seasons, we waited for Theon to man up. And he's still kind of not really there yet until finally his sister's like, honestly, if you're just going to be useless, then just go kill yourself. And now he's finally coming around a little bit. But I'm rooting for chaos. I'm rooting for an agent of chaos. I hope that instead of Jon Snow and Daenerys being able to unite, somehow they end up fighting each other to the point that the Night King wins. I'm rooting for all of the characters that have been killed to come back as dead zombie versions of themselves, and that's how the show ends. So with that, that's the end of part 1. So switching gears from fake wars to real ones, the very famous flag-raising photo on Iwo Jima, you know the one, it's got a memorial statue in Washington, D.C., of the American soldiers, all of them stacked up, raising the flag. Iconic, amazing, moving. If you've ever been to the statue in Washington, D.C., you can really feel the American pride that's there. Well, it just turns out now officially that the United States Marines have acknowledged that one of the men who was thought to be in the photos isn't in that photo. Isn't exactly him. It's not him anymore. Apparently, he raised a couple flags, and he was told it was him. He didn't know if it was, but he thought it was. His son wrote a book. Anyway, it turns out the whole time that the person in the photo was a private first class from Detroit named Harold Schultz. And what's so impressive about that is Private First Class Harold Schultz wasn't exactly a well-documented soldier. And he, more than likely, they think now he knew that he was in the photo. And he didn't try to claim credit for it or take credit away from anyone else. And he died in 1995 at age 70, and they said in his possession when he died was a photo of that image. So you want to talk about doing something for what it is and not for the credit that someone else is giving you. I mean, that man died knowing that he was one of the people that raised the flag in that incredibly iconic photo, that American moment that's just like inspired thousands, if not more, to fight for their country, to fight for freedom, to join the military, to do whatever they can to give back. He was in that photo. But it meant more to him, you know, the moment and what he was trying to achieve than trying to take credit or claim. One can assume to take credit or claim for a moment like that. So that, when I was thinking about that over the weekend, it sort of made me realize with the 4th of July coming up and everything, sometimes we lose track of the values of these holidays amidst the commercialization and the drinking and whatever. And, you know, I love to be part of all that too. But you just realize that maybe to have self-gratification, to be able to know what you did and know what it meant, and to do things for that purpose and not for the purpose of being rewarded or acknowledged, is maybe what makes someone a little bit more of a hero than someone else at times. So what can you do this week that you can acknowledge was awesome, even if no one else does? And how can you let that make you a better person? And that's how we're ending this Monday. Morning Deuce, hashtagtrending.com. D-spin for the win. I'm out. Later.